All right, welcome everyone. Welcome. We're here today to talk about the intersection of dietary supplements and hemp CBD. And we're going to have a lot of fun. We'll be reviewing this from a legal, a regulatory, a marketing, and an operational perspective. All right. My name's Asa Waldstein. I'm AHPA's Cannabis Committee Chair. I'm a 20-year dietary supplement manufacturer, and I am the founder of this education series. Before we get started, a quick little bit of housekeeping. We are recording today's session, and a download link will be sent to all who signed up. We do welcome your audience participation today, and you'll be able to chat with us through the Q&A tab on your screen, and we'll do our best to get to all these questions in the last 20 minutes or so of our event. I would like to thank Haley Chitty for his excellent administrative help today. Haley, I'm so happy you're here. During the event, Haley will be dropping in detailed panelist bios and their contact information into your chat box, and he'll also be fielding your questions a little later on in the event today. And with that, allow me to introduce our panelists. Today, we're joined by Ren Al-Mondhiry, partner at Amin Talati Wasserman, and Jeremy Stewart, Chief Scientist and VP of Scientific Affairs at Gaia Herbs. Welcome, Ren and Jeremy.
Thank you, Asa.
Perfect. It's great to see you both. All right, so I think we'll jump right in. Jeremy, why don't we start with you? Gaia Herbs is a large dietary supplement manufacturer with many great products, but our attendees might not be familiar with your hemp line. Can you give us a quick rundown of your hemp product offerings, please?
Sure. We offer two different kind of basic lines, a liquid line and our phytocapsule line. Within our liquid line, as far as retail goes, we offer two different levels of total cannabinoids, a 10 milligram and a 20 milligram per mil dose. We also have an HP variation at 40 milligrams per mil. And then within our phytocaps, we have 6 different kinds of phytocaps, 3 singles at different levels of 15, a 25, and a 50 milligram per dosage, or per capsule rather, dosage, and then 3 hemp plus herbs, one called Relief, one called Sleep, and one called Calm.
Cool, thanks so much. I can't wait to try those. Now, Ren, you're a partner with Amin Talati Wasserman, one of the top law firms in the space. Can you give us a quick overview of your area of practice, please?
Sure, thanks, Asa. And I would be remiss if I didn't just make one small comment, and that would be to say that I think you'll have an easier time with Jeremy and I today than Chris Wallace did last night at the debate. So anyway, my practice at Amin Talati focuses on advising clients in the dietary supplement, food, cosmetic, and over-the-counter medicine industries on a wide range of legal and regulatory matters, including labeling, claims, ingredient and formulation issues, substantiation, safety determinations, and of course, the range of compliance issues that come with adding CBD or other hemp derivatives to these products. And from an FDA, FTC, and class action perspective, as well as state-by-state compliance, which has really emerged as a key challenge for companies in the hemp space. And then our firm also has an exceptional trademark and patents team that has a lot of experience addressing.
Ren, one for you. Can you give us a quick snapshot into FDA's current regulatory position on CBD and any pending legislation updates as well, too, please?
Sure, and I'll try to keep this brief because I think a lot of folks in the audience are pretty familiar at this point with FDA's position. But while the 2018 Farm Bill legalized the production of hemp and derivatives like CBD, as many people know, this legislation did not alter FDA's authority over hemp and CBD products under its jurisdiction. And immediately after the Farm Bill passed, FDA restated its longstanding position on CBD and clarified that products containing CBD cannot be marketed as dietary supplements. And this is due to a provision in the law that excludes articles that have been studied or approved as a drug from use in supplements, unless there is evidence the article was previously marketed in a supplement or a food. But FDA has stated they're not aware of such evidence, and therefore FDA continues to maintain that CBD cannot be marketed as a dietary supplement. And there is similar language in the law that applies to food products, except it's worded as a prohibition against adding such an article to a food. versus an exclusion from the definition of dietary supplement. And this gets into some wonky, sort of nuanced legal territory that we don't need to delve into right now, but I think it's important and interesting because it seems to be one of the reasons why legalizing CBD has taken so long. Despite the provision in the law that I mentioned that precludes certain drug articles from use in supplements, FDA does have the authority to issue a rule that would otherwise allow its use in these products. But due to what FDA perceives as a significant regulatory gap in DSHEA, which is the framework governing dietary supplements, the agency doesn't seem to want to move forward because it doesn't think it can effectively police the CBD market. And because of this, federal legislation, HR 8179, which would allow CBD and other hemp derivatives in supplements, seems to have an uncertain future right now. We know FDA is telling Congress that it doesn't have the authority it needs to regulate CBD products on top of all the other supplements it's responsible for. And as we all know, FDA has consistently raised concerns about the safety of CBD. And we're going to expect to see more of that. And so for all these reasons, plus the other issues facing Congress right now, it seems unlikely that we'll see a legislative fix for CBD this year or a rulemaking from FDA, which they are authorized to do. But we are expecting some guidance from FDA on CBD, likely in the form of a enforcement policy. But true regulatory clarity just doesn't seem to be in the cards for 2020.
Yeah, thank you so much. And we also will have a poll on that for all of our attendees, which we'll be dropping in here throughout the event today. Thank you for that, Ren. Great. Now, Jeremy, the compliance guardrails, as Ren alluded to, seem to be ever-changing or at least nebulous at best. How does Gaia Herbs stay on top of these regulations? And how do these regs affect your approach to labeling, marketing, or even which states you can sell into?
Well, our approach has been certainly to utilize a legal firm to help us keep abreast of the ever-changing laws within states. That certainly, as Ren alluded to earlier, has been one of the bigger challenges utilizing this particular botanical in our materia medica. But yes, so we get updates from our legal team to let us know what changes have or haven't occurred within states. When we launched, we chose to go the route of not mentioning CBD anywhere on our label. And so you see only hemp alluded to, as well as total cannabinoids, and not making any really structure function claims around that. Those were sort of our guideposts as we entered into this market.
Perfect. Thank you. Now, one of the great things about this education series is I get to invite panelists I greatly respect, like you, Ren, and you, Jeremy, to come talk. But I also kind of get to ask whatever I want. So this next one's Jeremy. Gaia Herbs is one of the only major supplement brands to offer cannabinoid products. What was the thought process or behind the scenes discussion when deciding to open up your hemp line?
Well, I mean, we were very eager and watching the Farm Bill as it went through. Of course, as everybody knows now, it was signed right at the very end of the year. So, I mean, as lovers of botanicals, we were very excited to be able to bring in this particular herb into our materia medica and formulate with it. We did recognize that there were some of these challenges that are being discussed today and already mentioned. However, there did seem to be a fairly clear line that, if you stuck with labeling it as hemp and not mentioning CBD, and you're following 21 CFR Part 111, that was the guidance coming from industry affiliates as well as legal.
Perfect. Thank you for that. Now, Ren, let's flip that around. What considerations should hemp companies be aware of or be thinking of when adding dietary supplements into their hemp products?
Yeah, Asa, I love this question, and it's definitely one that every company considering adding hemp or CBD to their products should really think carefully about. So, dietary supplements are a category of food, and therefore, unless a law or a regulation contains an exception for dietary supplements, you need to follow basically the same laws and regulations that apply to food products. For example, understanding your food safety obligations under FSMA, following nutrient content claims regulations, and so much more. So claims like phytocannabinoid rich, which I see quite often, cannot be made for a dietary supplement. And it can also have class action ramifications. And then there are important requirements that apply only to dietary supplements, like setting up a system to monitor adverse events and reporting serious adverse event reports to FDA. So it's not as simple as finding someone to produce and label your products. There are a number of dense and technical areas of compliance, especially those affecting safety, that need to be understood. One other issue is combining CBD with other ingredients. For example, melatonin. You have two ingredients that with CBD could potentially cause somnolence at certain levels, and we know melatonin also causes drowsiness. Or what if you're combining CBD with an ingredient like caffeine or another ingredient that has a stimulating effect? What is the safety of that product look like? And also you have to consider substantiation, and are the claims that you're trying to make for CBD somehow going to be affected by the presence of this other ingredient? Is there a synergistic effect? Is there an antagonistic effect? So understanding the full range of FDA and FTC compliance issues that come up, just moving beyond the Farm Bill and sourcing issues, there are quite a few considerations to understand and work through.
Those were wonderful comments, and you really touched on a couple really important topics, such as nutrient content claims. I can't tell you the number of labels that I've reviewed where they say PCR rich or phytocannabinoid rich, and I say rich is a nutrient content claim. It has a definition. I don't think we want to dig too much into THC free, but free obviously has a FDA definition when we look at gluten free, for example. So I've got a whole spiel on that on my YouTube thing as well too. That's really important. And just to kind of clarify, we've got a pretty high level attendees here. So I'm sure most of our attendees are aware of adverse event reporting, but my understanding is you need a domestic phone number or a domestic street address on your label every time a website doesn't count. Is that correct?
Yeah, you need to have the contact information for the responsible person who will be maintaining these and reviewing these adverse event reports, and also making sure that that your staff is trained to be able to do that. And there are plenty of consultant groups out there and great companies like Safety Call that can help you understand what your obligations are in terms of training and record keeping. Because it's not only submitting those serious adverse event reports to FDA within 15 days, but you need to keep records of adverse events for up to 6 years. And during an FDA inspection, like for GMP compliance, they can ask to see those records. And if you don't have them, then you can be cited for that during the inspection.
It's normally the first thing they ask for.
It is. They popped into my facility, unannounced, badges flying, the whole deal, 3 times actually, and that's kind of, I think, what they've went to in the first hour. Or so. Can I see your customer complaint log or your adverse event log and that type of thing as well? Yeah, not to spend too much time on adverse events and adverse event reporting, but it is very, very important that you close out every adverse event, even if it is someone calling up that be a little bit frivolous. You do have to have a member of quality out. Now, Jeremy, over to you. What are some of the biggest challenges that Gaia has faced with your hemp line, opening up your hemp line? Have you guys had any problems compared to any other herbal products?
Definitely what we've touched on earlier, just having each state basically having their own rules and regulations. That certainly has been a challenge and something that needs to be kept up with routinely. And then how that kind of ripples out through the remainder. You have Amazon that doesn't sell hemp or CBD products. And that has translated into some of the larger key account retail stores, even before COVID hit, and we saw a drop in retail velocity. But I would say that's been the number one challenge, because other than that, it's an herb. It's easy to work with. We've been able to source COG, so that hasn't been an issue. The state regulations as far as growing the hemp has been wonderful, within North Carolina, within Kentucky, within Oregon. These are the states that we've dealt with as far as growing it. So that aspect of the regulations has been, I think, a shining spot.
Great. Thanks for that. Now, I see that we've got a lot of questions so far on labeling. And Jeremy, I know you touched on this a little bit earlier, but I think we'll start with Rend. Let's talk about labeling. I'm sure you time about how to label hemp products, in particular with the statement of identity. People may supplement facts. CBD is not a supplement if you go buy the book with the black and white comments from the FDA. What's your advice on companies on the statement of identity or how to label their hemp products?
Yeah, I mean, just to start with labeling generally, I mean, it can get really technical and complicated. So it's important to have a good understanding of where you shouldn't stray from the regulation and where strict compliance is more essential. And this can help reduce risk, not just from a regulatory angle, but from a class action litigation perspective as well. And a consultant or a law firm can help, and especially with issues, like implied disease claims, that can be hard to pinpoint. I think, these are really areas where companies need to take a close, hard look. But from a high level, stepping back, despite FDA's position, we as a firm do not recommend straying from the dietary supplement labeling rules, including the statement of identity, or using something like product facts. Because even if you don't call your product a dietary supplement, FDA regulates products based on intended use. And actually, FDA just issued an announcement about updating its intended use requirements and what it looks at when determining intended use. So FDA uses a variety of factors and can determine that your product is still a dietary supplement, even if you don't call it that. Or worse, they could determine that your product is a drug. So putting that statement of identity, identifying your product as a dietary supplement, and following all the rules that go along with marketing your product as a dietary supplement is something we absolutely recommend.
Got it. What is the risk level if a company just wants to have a statement of identity, such as a product facts or an herbal remedy? It seems pretty risky to me.
Yeah, again, because FDA can look to these other factors to determine your product's a supplement, the directions for use and other factors. So then you have a product that's mislabeled, and again, FDA could determine that your product is intended to be used as a drug. So whatever you can do on your labeling to confirm that your product is a dietary supplement, will help reduce risk. And unfortunately, we were talking about states, but I think it was Louisiana that was telling dietary supplement companies to use a product facts, right, and not use a supplement facts. And I think that's really a disservice to companies, and I think points to a larger problem of states not really understanding how comprehensive the federal rules are with respect to dietary supplements. And I think, we can go back and forth and you hear folks saying, oh, they aren't robust enough. But the fact is they are comprehensive. They cover all aspects of labeling, safety, claims, substantiation, all of these things. And it's tough when you see other states coming out with rules that either contradict or are duplicative of what's required at the federal level, and sometimes don't even move the needle on safety and consumer protection.
Sure. Yeah, Louisiana is a great extreme example. When I was getting a product registered in Louisiana, I decided not to, because I couldn't bring myself to put product facts on a product. Just it was pretty annoying indeed. I know a lot of people, when you're having a discussion about statement of identity, they'll bring up FDA warning letters where CBD is not a dietary supplement, but then they'll also refer to class actions. Now, several months ago, this was maybe a more applicable discussion. I believe that most, if not all, the class actions out there, Ren, that only listed a hemp CBD product as a dietary supplement and didn't make any other claims, I believe those class actions have either been stayed or have gone away. Is that correct?
Yeah, as the last time that I looked into this, I believe, most if most of those class actions challenging the fact that the products are being marketed as supplements in light of FDA's position have been stayed on primary jurisdiction grounds, citing the fact that FDA has made it clear that they are continuing to examine the regulatory status of CBD, and courts have responded by rightly so by saying that they're not willing to take up these complicated issues that are clearly more suited for FDA to consider. And then we would have different courts in different areas of the country having different rules around CBD, which is definitely not what we want, and not what the courts want to be doing.
Yep. So true. Thank you for that. Now, I just want to take a quick aside and talk about. You can see my over my left shoulder here in my wonderful Marriott hotel here in Durango, Colorado. I roll with my AHPA band. All of our panelists are AHPA members, but I did just want to quickly talk about the Cannabis Committee. AHPA's Cannabis Committee is just celebrating its 10th anniversary this year, which is actually amazing when you think about what was going on 10 years ago in the cannabis industry. I think many in the dietary supplement industry, and probably perhaps maybe myself included, didn't even want to mention the word cannabis. So it really shows the foresight of founding chair Alon Sudberg, Michael McGuffin, AHPA president, and a lot of AHPA staff, the foresight that they had to put this committee together when many didn't even want to mention the word cannabis, as I said. So if you want to find any more information about AHPA and our Cannabis Committee, just send me a message, or you can find that on the website. So there's my plug here for the AHPA Cannabis Committee. I went on a trip with my AHPA Cannabis Committee banner, so I figure I might as well talk about it.
No, it's a great committee. I've been on a number of those calls, and it's a great source of information and a great service to the industry. So glad you mentioned it.
Thank you. Now, we've had a lot of questions come in on manufacturing, which I was really happy to see. Jeremy, how does Gaia approach manufacturing your hemp products? Do you use different facilities, different production lines, different validated cleaning procedures, or do you just treat it as any other herbal extract and just make sure things are properly cleaned in between runs?
We so our liquid is produced as a co-manufactured product, and then our phytocaps, we produce those in-house. And it's just we treat it as any other herb. We utilize our cleaning procedure that we have, for the past decade probably. That's been validated and has gone through several FDA inspections.
Perfect. Thanks. Now, Ren, as hemp companies are preparing applications that will likely require safety data, what methods or approach are you seeing the companies are using to prove their product safety?
Yeah, so there are several companies that are pursuing self-affirmed GRAS for their hemp ingredients, following in the footsteps of CB Sciences and Charlotte's Web. CB Sciences being the first to complete self-affirmed GRAS for their hemp ingredient. As we wait for more clarity from FDA, I mean, this is one really great option that companies can consider to demonstrate the safety of their ingredients. And this approach can involve subchronic toxicity studies that address several of the safety concerns that have been noted by FDA, such as effects on the liver. It can include studies on the mutagenic potential of CBD and related safety issues. And these studies would also satisfy some of the requirements for NDI notification. So it's a good option for companies to consider. And we have several clients, and I'm sure others in the industry are considering or in the process of submitting novel food applications in order to market CBD products in the EU, which obviously has a safety component to it. So those are two ways that come to mind.
Perfect, thanks. So, I think we're going to probably move on to the Q&A section of our webinar here. Looks like we've got a lot of great questions coming in. So Haley, if you're ready, thanks for providing the production help today. If you're ready for audience questions, I think we're all good here. Be on the spot, sorry. He might be joining us here via audio.
Muting, sorry, unmute, yes, here we go. Let's just jump right in. Yeah, I'm gonna just do these as they came in, I think. So, let me scroll down. Since terpene derivatives from hemp are not recognized as grass, what is their fate in terms of regulatory risk outside the overall risk of all hemp derivatives posed by the current regulatory status issues being discussed here? So I just think, is there any difference between the terpene and overall hemp derivatives?
And I can get I can start with an answer to that question. So I mean, I think there are a few, maybe one or two terpenes that are considered grass, and that would qualify them for use in dietary supplements, provided that you are following the conditions set forth in the GRAS regulation. There may be some that are self-affirmed GRAS. I'm not sure. I can't think of any that come to mind. But for other terpenes that have no history of legal use in the food supply or are not old dietary ingredients, they would be treated as and regulated as new dietary ingredients. So you would need to follow the provisions of what's required for NDIs under the law, which could be an NDI notification, or again, if you were able to point to use in the food supply and you were using the same form of the ingredient in a manner that's not where the ingredient isn't chemically altered, that's another option. So the bottom line, it's going to take some detective work on the part of a company if you want to use other hemp derivatives like terpenes to figure out what is their regulatory status, and more importantly what is the basis for safety in the amount that you're using in a dietary supplement product.
Great. Anyone else want to chime in? Great. So we've got just a couple of questions about supplements for pets. And so there's some questions on how those are regulated. Are they different? So I think I'll just throw that out there and maybe you can each discuss for just a minute or two the pet supplement with hemp and CBD.
Happy to take this one first too. So there is no recognized pet supplement category. Pet products that are ingested are either regulated as animal food or animal drugs. But in working with the National Animal Supplement Council, which has done great work in the area of pet supplements, they have worked closely with FDA to have established a pet supplement category, for lack of better words, that if companies are following NASC guidelines for pet supplements, and they do have some guidance specific to hemp and CBD products, FDA has generally not enforced against the pet supplement product category. At the state level, it gets a little complicated. Most states have specifically stated that hemp ingredients cannot be used in animal products. And AHPA, which is a state organization or a national organization that oversees different state bodies that regulate animal feed products, has said that even hemp seed oil, there's not enough safety information to allow its use in animal feed products. And they have come out and pretty much said that you can't use hemp-derived ingredients in animal food. But it seems like for the most part, there hasn't been a lot of enforcement, even at the state level, against these products. And again, I think, being a member of NASC and following their guidelines for labeling and things like that can certainly help to reduce risk.
Great. And go ahead.
On that, I wanted to just add on that one more, if I may, Haley. When you look at FDA enforcement trend analysis, one of my favorite topics, you are seeing more and more FDA warning letters focused on pet or animal products. But I think in all but one, they all included claims. So if someone's a product for an animal, I personally think that cannabinoids work very well in animals and pets in that category. So if someone's making a product for pets and they're not making any type of really over the top claims, it's probably in the lower risk category. But I'd like to comment that some of the warning letters even mentioned what I'd call mid-level risk. So they may say things like anxiety, which obviously none of our attendees today will ever say anxiety when they're referring to hemp products, because you can't do that. But I'm even seeing the FDA in these enforcement trends notate what I consider lower risk claims as well too. So if you're making an animal product with CBD, you're following all the safety, making sure it's not contaminated with microbials, and you're not making any claims, you're probably in the lower risk category.
Mm-hmm. No, that's a great point, Asa. Sticking with mild claims for pet supplement products can certainly help. But the issue is that the structure function claims, which are clearly allowed for human supplements. There's no provision in the law that would allow structure function claims for animal products that would cause the product to be a drug. But again, historically with animal supplements, FDA has not intervened when companies are following NASC guidelines and otherwise selling compliant products, and compliant in other aspects, I should say.
Great, and this will just dovetail right into these next couple questions. And these are all sort of how FDA is treating this stuff. And I think we're talking both about compliance, but then also protecting yourself from enforcement. So just a real broad question, does FDA consider the regulation of hemp and CBD the same?
Question.
Yeah. It's the issue is CBD, right? But most hemp extracts contain CBD. I don't know anybody that's taking the CBD out of their hemp extract. So, we have, in terms of, precedent, we have the red yeast rice example, where it was recognized that, potentially, naturally occurring levels of lovastatin would be okay. So, although we haven't really gotten any further clarity from FDA, it stands to reason that naturally occurring unmanipulated levels of CBD in a simple hemp extract should be okay. I was on, actually it was an AHPA webinar where I believe it was Sharon Mail, was a similar question was posed to her. And if I recall correctly, she pretty much said that any amount of CBD would potentially invoke the IND preclusion. So, but I've also heard informally from other FDA staff that, naturally occurring CBD, that isn't something that is within the scope of FDA's position. So, we hear conflicting things. It's very confusing for industry. It seems that looking at warning letters, FDA has been more focused on products that were called CBD products or otherwise had very, prominent CBD callouts, and not so much on hemp extract. So I think just looking at that history of warning letter activity seems to indicate that FDA does in fact make a distinction between hemp products and CBD products. But, until we actually have some further clarity and more detailed guidance from FDA, I think it doesn't give companies much comfort if they are selling a hemp extract product to, for example, to submit an NDI notification for a hemp extract, or even one where there are naturally occurring levels of CBD. I think we need to hear more from FDA on that topic before we can have a clear answer.
And as far as, from industry's perspective, that's exactly where Gaia has hung our hat, is to keep in the line, not manipulate any levels, not add any isolates, not take away THC, but just follow the provisions as they've been written, keeping below the 0.3% THC and not manipulating any of the levels, and certainly not getting anywhere near a suggested dosage that gets you, into the Epidiolex range, so that you're not again playing in the pharmaceutical dosage kind of therapeutic. Because again, dietary supplements aren't intended to treat disease, and people certainly from Gaia's perspective shouldn't be looking at our products to to help with any sort of epilepsy or anything like that. It's not our intention.
Very good. And then in terms of sort of mitigating some of the risks, despite FDA's position, does complying with dietary supplement labeling guidelines provide any safe harbor from enforcement? And then the sort of follow-up question here, are we operating under the assumption that companies are doing due diligence for state law only in the states where they're allowed to operate?
I'd be happy to jump in. Thanks for that, Haley. When we look at labeling guidelines, what I've always done is followed AHPA's guidance. We can either drop that into the chat, or you can find that on the AHPA website of labeling for hemp CBD companies. It's basically everything we've talked about here so far today. Don't make claims. Make sure you can support your adverse event reporting through an address or a phone number. Have your FDA disclaimer, not for pregnancy or nursing, all these kind of basic disclaimers. But I feel that just because CBD isn't regulated as a supplement, it's not regulated as a product, whatever made up name you want to go, doesn't mean that we should all just go home and go to sleep. We have to work with the best parameters that we have, which are dietary supplement regulations. So in lieu of clear regulations, I think it does provide a layer of protection, at least helps me sleep better at night. For me, I always have to say one silly thing about cats. So when I'm not sleeping good at night, my cat loves it because she thinks I'm going to feed her in the middle of the night. But compliant dietary supplement regs help me feel better about my my product and my compliance. And just to add on that too is dietary supplement regs are wonderful. I really like them. They provide protection. And rule number one for being a dietary supplement manufacturer is FDA food facility registration. And what I always like to say is, if your hemp CBD company is not FDA registered, then run, because that is kind of the step in becoming a compliant company.
Mm-hmm.
And there's been a lot of concern about the recent DEA action, so I thought it might be good to just address that from a regulatory and legal perspective, as well as from a practical perspective from the company. So I know there's a lot of anxiety around that, and I'll just throw it out there. That maybe start with Rend.
Sure. So, I mean, I think, the issue with the DEA hemp extract rule, and for those of you who don't know, it basically formalizes what I think most of us in the industry knew, which was that, even if your hemp extract during processing only temporarily exceeds the 0.3% delta 9 limit, that temporary increase does render the product a Schedule I controlled substance. So again, I don't think this is new information, but seeing it formalized by FDA and I'm sorry, by DEA and put out there, I think kind of brings it to a next level and clearly raises some concerns, especially since many companies are, I wouldn't say many, but there are several companies in the industry who are transporting this intermediate in-process extract across state lines, storing it for some period of time, and also potentially have residual THC once it's removed, maybe sitting around their facility somewhere. So it does implicate a number of legal issues. And I know that the industry has been mobilized in responding to this. There are efforts to get Congress involved to somehow, make an exception for in-process hemp extract, that if certain parameters or guardrails were met, that companies would be able to continue with their normal operations in handling in-process hemp extract. So I don't know if Asa or Jeremy want to add anything to that.
Yeah, from our perspective, as I mentioned before, we use a co-man. We don't receive anything from that co-manufacturer that is certainly has to meet the less than 0.3% THC, again, to cross state lines to be compliant within North Carolina and for us to receive it in. And then for our own process, nothing comes out of the extractor that would be above 0.3. So we don't store any intermediate, and there's nothing outside of our equipment that would meet that criteria. So that's kind of our MO.
That's perfect, Jeremy. Thanks for pointing that out. That's part of old school or holistic infusion or extraction processes when it comes to herbalism, is we're not tweaking something so it goes way up. So you're basically using a food-based approach to pull cannabinoids. THC is one of them out of the plant. It's not going to go over 0.3% because you're not making a strong distillate or anything like that out of it. So it really speaks to the non-spiked approach to manufacturing as well too. I really like that. And as a clinical herbalist, I really appreciate the natural holistic background as well too. Now, Ren, I cringed when I heard you say that people are actually sending intermediates across state lines that are up 0.3%. Would really, if someone did that, that would be scary. Please don't do that. I know people do that within states. I live in Colorado, and that's obviously not cool, but we haven't seen any enforcement, surprisingly, on that. But if someone was going to send an intermediate across state line that was above 0.3%, that would be very, very scary to me.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I mean, looking at state laws, while some are more either enforcement or in terms of their own regulations permitting that, there are other states that have clearly said. I was looking into the transportation requirements for hemp extract in Wisconsin, and the regulators there were very clear. It doesn't matter where it's coming from, but it can't exceed 0.3%, whether it's produced in extracted in state or in Colorado, for example, and brought in. It has to be under that 0.3% threshold. That there are presumably other options. I know there's various reasons why companies wouldn't dilute it in their own facility, but that is one. That's one possible way to do it, is to keep your supply chain, I guess, closer to home, and do it that way for this specific type of product.
Perfect. Thanks for that. I want to just jump in, Haley, if I could ask one question here about Prop 6, since we're talking about THC, about Prop 65. So, Rand, have you had many of your clients realize the ramification of the Prop 65 THC law that the grace period ends on January 2nd or January 3rd? Have a lot of people been talking to you about that lately?
Yeah, we've been getting a lot of inquiries about that because, the way Prop 65 is implemented, unless there is a safe harbor set for a listed chemical, the presence of any detectable amount of a listed chemical could trigger the need for a warning. And of course, these warnings are not mandatory. Companies can leave them off. But that really, it creates a difficult situation where companies are having to defend their decision not to warn in court. And it's really a plaintiff-friendly law that we're dealing with here. So so much of the burden to prove the product doesn't require a warning is on the defendant. And there's really, little that plaintiffs have to do to bring litigation. It can be costly, lengthy, that I think most companies are deciding to include the Prop 65 warning on their products, unless they are really absolutely sure that no THC can be detected. And I think, although it looks a little scary to have that warning on there, I think California residents are arguably desensitized to it. I mean, you see the warning on so many products, places, objects, you name it. So I think it's just comes with the cost of doing business in California.
Yep, we put it on our label.
You do, yeah, indeed, and that's for any product distributed or sold in California, and the grace period ends, beginning on January 3rd of this year, coming up. So selling a product now that might end up in California on January 3rd.
Yeah, and I just want to add one thing, that it's not just the regulations were changed in 2018 for Prop 65, where it's not just that you have to have the warning on the product itself. If you're selling a product online, the warning has to be provided to the California consumer prior to purchase. So before they buy the product, and it can be in the form of a hyperlink, as long as it's clear and conspicuous. So I just wanted to mention that, having the warning on the product when the consumer gets it in the mail, which pretty much everyone's ordering online right now, to make sure that you are fulfilling that prior to purchase requirement for Prop 65.
That is a great point. And no digital marketing person wants to put that all over their website. So you kind of write a little bit of code and say whenever anybody puts in a California zip code,
yep, exactly,
it shows right up. And yeah, you're right. That's relatively new in the last couple of years. I did do an event on this a few months ago with Dave Rodman and Jane Wilson from AHPA. I believe Haley will be dropping in a YouTube link to that YouTube channel too, and you can kind of check that out as well, or talk to wonderful law firms like Amin Talati if you need guidance. This is a real thing. I did have a lot more hair on my head before I got a Prop 66 notice. It's really expensive. You want to avoid it. It's nearly impossible to fight. Thanks, Haley. Moving on, if we've got a few more, please.
Indeed. Here was one for Rend, but Jeremy, you might have some insight on this too. On AERs, given that FDA's opinion on CBD supplements, do you recommend reporting CBD-related serious adverse events to FDA? Does that draw unwanted attention or show good faith?
I think it shows good faith that a company is complying with the dietary supplement requirements. Again, I think ASA said this very well. If you are holding your product out as a dietary supplement, you should be following all the rules and regulations that come with that. Despite FDA's position, it's really a key way to reduce risk. And I think having that data is also useful, for FDA. And from what I understand, and I was part of a Q&A panel last week at one of the Dietary Supplement Trade Association events, it seems that AERs overall for CBD are very low and align with the number of adverse event reports for dietary supplements generally. So, I think, again, it does show good faith, and it gives FDA important data. And also, too, it's and FDA has been clear about this, that it doesn't automatically mean that there's, your product is clearly associated with that adverse event report. I think some companies are scared to do it because they think that FDA would, jump to the conclusion that there's a safety issue with their product. It's just because an AER is associated with your product doesn't mean that it's the cause. And FDA very clearly understands the difference between, association and causation. And again, it's the right thing to do to follow the law and submit those serious adverse event reports.
Yep, 100% agree. If supplement companies are in the business to help people out, and if there is an issue such as a serious adverse event, it is everybody's responsibility to make that public information so that we can, if there's a pattern emerging, then you should all be able to see that. So that's absolutely Gaia's perspective as well.
Yes, indeed. And those are great comments, Jeremy and Ren. And there was a warning letter which came out a little while ago, which a company, the primary basis of the FDA warning letter was the company did not report their SAERs or their serious adverse reports. So you can also get in a lot of trouble. So it's the right thing to do. We're following dietary supplement regs. It's great. I've had to submit a few in my career over 20 years. And during FDA inspections, they haven't even asked me about them because they really wanted to just see your adverse event report. Did you close them out? If there's a couple SAERs, then you handle them properly, investigation, and you kind of move on. Now, Haley, do we have one more question here before I jump into the wrap up?
Yeah, definitely. So I got one more here. And this goes back to labeling too. A lot of companies attempt to get around restrictions on hemp and dietary supplements by labeling their products simply as supplements or CBD capsule or oil. I've seen botanical samples before too, just kind of any way to get around that. Can you just speak to the effectiveness of that and your insight on those?
So if I understood that, I'm not quite sure I understand the question, but
sorry, let me see if I can be a little more clear. So, can you get around basically the FDA's position on labeling these as dietary supplements by getting a little creative in how you list the ingredients, label the product, that sort of thing? I think it would probably still be looked to a consumer as a dietary supplement, but might not necessarily be labeled that way.
Well, I'll just go back to what I had initially said about, including that statement of identity, identifying your product as a dietary supplement, and following all the requirements around declaring your ingredients. So if your product is, if it contains hemp extract, labeling the correct amount of hemp extract that's in your product. If you are adding CBD isolate, for example, to your product, making sure that's listed on the label, and otherwise, declaring your ingredients properly. And I would, hesitate to endorse any approach that is, taking some creative liberties with any of those issues regarding ingredient declaration or statement of identity, and to stick to compliance with FDA's labeling rules. Because again, it's never good to not be fully transparent with consumers. They need to know what they're purchasing, and clearly identify what product that it is that they're purchasing. And there are also rules against holding out your product to be a conventional food. And I'll just mention quickly that given the fact that the safety standard for food is much stricter, and there are other important aspects of conventional foods. Just as you don't want your product to be considered a drug by FDA based on intended use and various aspects of labeling, it's also risky to hold out your product to be a food when it really is intended to be a dietary supplement. So I think, again, just to summarize, if you're going to pick the dietary supplement pathway, to do everything else that comes along with it, and not take too many liberties.
Thanks for that.
And simply not putting dietary supplement on the label doesn't exempt you from the FDA regulations for dietary supplements, correct?
If you don't have dietary supplement on there, you can still be subject to the dietary supplement regulations. And if you do put it on there, then I mean, I think either way, if your product is intended to be a dietary supplement, you should follow all the rules that go with that.
Okay, so I hope I got to the bottom of that question. I'm not sure if I was totally clear, but thank you.
Yeah, that was great. Perfect. And kind of one final wrap-up question, if I may here. We'll start with you, Rand, and then you, Jeremy.
Mm-hmm.
How do you see the future of hemp CBD and supplements looking, and what can companies do to prepare for this?
Sure. So over the past few years, there's been obviously a lot of attention on CBD, but the conversations that I'm having more recently are now turning to minor cannabinoids like CBG and CBN and terpenes. But as companies explore, I think it's important to keep in mind and fully understand, as we've, or maybe as I have said over and over again, probably a million times during this past hour, is to fully understand the regulatory pathways to market these ingredients and supplement, or food, if for that matter. They have similar challenges to CBD, maybe not the IND preclusion issue, but these ingredients are all likely new dietary ingredients. So being aware of the requirements for NDIs and addressing the safe use and the fact that many of these products have a lack of history of safe use is going to be important.
Yeah, and from my perspective, I really think the future companies, we need to understand what are the importance of terpenes, what are the importance of the cannabinoids, how does this interact with the endocannabinoid system, this whole concept of entourage effect. I think this is going to be very important for companies moving forward, not only to be able to make efficacious products and to be able to clearly identify how they should be used, but it'll also feed into safety as well, which is also another major issue for our industry and for FDA.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I really wanted to say thank you to Haley for your help today. I really appreciate it. And thank you to you, Rand, and you, Jeremy, for this excellent discussion. Remind all the attendees, if you want to